Thank you so much, everyone who is tuning in. Today, we are going to be talking about disaster recovery out of the box and how you can achieve that with temporal high availability and our features. So, super excited to cover the topic. But before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you can just go to the next slide, please. You might have seen that poll come out. Feel free to answer that at your own time and pace. We'd love to hear your feedback and thoughts on the topic. And then in addition to that, this webinar will run for roughly 45 minutes. We'll also have a live demo and cover the agenda in a bit. But in the meantime, if you have any questions during the presentation, we recommend using the Q&A button at the bottom. You'll see that at the bottom of your screen, and you can submit questions there, and that way we'll be able to answer them during the webinar after, and we won't lose track of that. So please use that if you have any specific questions. And then lastly, we're going to be sending a recording out to everyone who registered for this webinar. So if you missed something, no worries. We'll have the full recording available for you shortly after the webinar is completed. And so with that, I'm going to pass it off to our hosts of the webinar today to get started. So we can head over to the next slide. And if you guys just want to introduce yourselves, that'd be awesome.
Great. Morning, everyone. My name's Luke. I am the product manager at Temporal for high availability. I also work on connectivity and general deployment models. Before coming to Temporal, I was at Confluent for 5 years, where I was also the product manager for high availability for Apache Kafka.
Cool. And my name is Jimmy J, and I am a solutions architect here at Temporal. And prior to Temporal, I was working as a software engineer for over 10 years on product and infrastructure teams at companies like Pinterest, Nextdoor, and Accenture. And our agenda today will be just a quick slide about what Temporal is for anyone that's new. We'll talk about what high availability is, who should use it, what you get, how it works, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. Great, so what is Temporal? For anyone that's new, it's a durable execution platform for building reliable, long-running applications. By default, Temporal makes workflows fault-tolerant and stateful. You write workflows as code, and Temporal ensures that they run reliably at virtually any scale. And it's used by companies like Block to ensure that high-stakes financial workflows run without incidents, which is a nice segue into what we're going to talk about today. So what is high availability? The problem that we face today is distributed systems in the cloud fail in layers. So availability zones go dark, cells degrade, and it's rare, but it's memorable when your cloud provider has an incident that makes headlines. High availability, or HA in Temporal Cloud, isn't about preventing these failures. That's virtually impossible. It's about making recovery so predictable and rehearsed that you can handle a regional outage without breaking a sweat. So who should use high availability? This is a questionnaire that we sent to a lot of engineers that are both in management and non-management. And on the non-management side, that includes your principal and distinguished engineers. And the question that we asked was, what are the most significant business impacts if your systems/infrastructure experience failure or downtime? And these were the responses: customer churn, increased operational costs, revenue loss, reputational damage, compliance and regulatory violations. And 95% of participants believe that there is significant business impact if and when your systems do go down. And according to Gartner, Gartner projects that by 2026, which is this year, 80% of dependency risk incidents will originate in external third-party infrastructure providers, which is up from 53% in 2024. So with high availability, is it all or nothing? Not every workload risks customer churn, operational costs, loss of revenue, reputational damage, etc. With Temporal Cloud, you can put your most critical workloads on high availability, and you can keep your lower criticality workloads standard. And the way we do that at Temporal is we do it by what we call a namespace. A namespace at Temporal is a logical boundary of your workloads. and you can have virtually as many namespaces as you want. So you can make this as granular as you want. And then you can easily turn on HA. You can turn HA on and off on command. So what you get with contractual SLAs on Temporal Cloud, with standard non-high availability, we offer 3 nines of contractual SLA. With high availability, we offer 4 nines of contractual SLA. And this is a quote from a CIO of one of the largest fintech companies. The difference of an extra 9 is if I have to pay $1 million versus losing $50 million, I will do that trade all day long. And what you get in terms of recovery time. So recovery time is measured as RTO or recovery time objective. This is the max allowed downtime. So in the event that there is a cloud region outage, without Temporal Cloud high availability, your RTO is essentially unbounded. You'll just have to wait for the cloud region to recover. And with high availability, you have a sub 20-minute RTO, which includes the observability and detecting of the outage, as well as failing over all of your workloads from one region to another or from one cloud provider to another. And Fire Hydrant is one of our customers, and they have a product called Signals that sends incident alerting to engineering teams, which is very important to us. And they run all of their alerts on Temporal Cloud. And then during a recent cloud outage that unfortunately made the news, their alerts kept flowing thanks to Temporal's high availability. And then what you get in terms of disaster recovery, building a disaster recovery system takes time, operational excellence, and requires constant upkeep. Temporal Cloud provides disaster recovery out of the box with high availability. We offer a way to automatically fail over based on health signals with a sub 20-minute RTO, which is handled 100% by Temporal Cloud. You don't have to lift a finger to fail over your workloads. And then we also offer the ability to manually fail over with just the push of a button. And these are some of the companies that use high availability on Temporal Cloud. This runs the gamut of industries. So we have Netflix, video streaming, we have social media, domain hosting, airlines, financial services, and healthcare. And we have 100 more customers as well that are using high availability on Temporal Cloud. And I'm going to pass it over to Luke now to talk about how it works.
Great. Thanks, Jimmy. So you saw, recap of all the wonderful things you get if you turn on high availability on Temporal Cloud. Now we're going to go through, how does it actually work, and then show a demo. So by default, your Temporal Cloud namespaces, they run in one cloud region. And your workers, which are in your environment, we suggest keeping them in the same cloud region as your namespace. And those are going to process your workflows in conjunction with your Temporal Cloud namespace. So to turn on high availability, you add a replica in a different cloud region. So this is just one command, one button, or one Terraform update. This now stretches your namespace, so it now exists in 2 different cloud regions. And by the way, if you have a multi-cloud strategy, multi-cloud works the exact same way. You just pick a different cloud provider to put that replica in. So all of the patterns and features we're talking about today, they work for multi-region on one cloud, or they work for multi-cloud. And we're Temporal Cloud currently we have AWS and GCP as of April 2026. So let's dig a little one level deeper. So Temporal HA is active passive. So your namespace is always active in one cloud region. The place where you put your replica, in standard terms, that's passive. And we replicate for you as a managed service in real time from your active to your passive, so that the passive always has a up-to-date, copy of everything that's happening in your active region. We replicate using asynchronous replication. What that means for you is that there's no latency impact on your workers. There's no performance impact on your workflows. So if you were running in one region and then you add, replica in another region for your namespace, there will be no performance change that you experience. So what happens when an outage hits? So if that whole region goes down, like you read in the headlines, or maybe you've experienced yourself. So there's two things that happen in parallel. The first thing that happens is Temporal fails over the namespace. And we'll do this automatically for you. We detect cloud outages, and we're always improving our detection with the latest ways to detect that the region's gone down or the namespace is unreachable. Like Jimmy mentioned, there's an RTO of 20 minutes. So that's our publicly stated goal, that from the time the outage hits and begins and the namespace is degraded uh, until the time that it is automatically, without you intervening at all, active in that new region. Our public goal is 20 minutes. And the vast majority of that time is just detecting the outage, because no two outages are the same. There's not a deterministic thing we can, detect all the time. So it does take a few minutes for us to notice that, hey, an outage is going on. And that's what makes up the vast majority of this RTO. Now, if you'd rather, you can call failover yourself. You can turn off automatic failovers if you want. Take on the onus of detecting the cloud outages. And when you call failover, this completes in less than 10 seconds. So then your recovery time is your time to detect the outage and call failover. And you can call manual failover anytime you want, even if you have manual automatic failovers turned on. This is just always an option available to you. So I said there's two things that happen in parallel. This is the other thing. So you need to start your workers in that new region, because if your workers were running in region A that had an outage, they're going to be degraded, impacted, unreachable too. Now, so one thing I love about Temporal Cloud is when you start your workers in this new region, and now they're connecting to Temporal Cloud in a different region, there's no config changes needed, in your SDK. So it's the same Temporal Cloud endpoint. It's the same credentials. Those endpoints and credentials, they span regions and they span clouds. So that you don't have to be managing and figuring out, like, how do I get the right credentials to my workers depending on what region it is. So once you've started your workers, the namespace has failed over. That's it. Workflows resume. You've avoided the outage, and business is back to running. And this includes, not only new workflows and new work that your workers are doing, but it includes in-progress workflows, so even things that were happening when the outage hit, and closed workflows, so that history, if you need to go in and inspect and troubleshoot, in the middle of one of these outages, you've got all of that available to you in region B, even while your main region, region A, is unstable. And, I think it gets even better, because when the outage ends, Temporal will just automatically recover the data, get your region A and region B back in sync, and then automatically fail back for you. So we've put a lot of work into this recovery process, because we know outages don't end when you fail over. There's fail back is just as important. And so all you have to do now is move your workers back home, and you're back to normal. You can move those workers in any order. They can reach cross-region to Temporal Cloud, and there's no sequencing. You don't have to move them all at once. You've got a lot of flexibility there in the failback process. Cool, so now we're gonna see a demo. So in this demo, we're gonna see a sample app that I made with just AI, Claude. And the app is gonna be running in one region. You're gonna see me add a replica and then trigger a failure, trigger a failover, and see things go back to normal. So it's a 4-minute video. Hope you enjoy. So I've got this little app that I've coded in AI or asked AI to make. It's just a web page change detector. It's monitoring these URLs. You can see I've got Federal Reserve news here, and it's just detecting when they change. All of this data is stored in the workflow itself. I'm not writing to any external databases right now, so I'm just getting this by querying the workflow state. What makes it cool is that it's running on Temporal, so it's durable and distributed. So we handle, crashes, retries, anything like that. And you can see here in the Temporal UI, I've got, the workflow, it's fetching the content, it's sleeping for 10 seconds. And I see the whole history there. Now, this namespace in Temporal is running in US East 1, AWS US East 1, but what if that whole region, were to come down? That's what we're going to talk about. I also have a US East 1 worker, so just a virtual machine on this simple service where I'm running a worker, and that's what's actually executing the code. You can see that in this latency graph, where you see the latency for US East 1 is much lower than the latency for US East 2 or wherever the Fed hosts their news, which makes sense because the code's being run in that region. It's going to have lower latency. So now let's make this app multi-region so it can survive an outage if US East 1 fails. I'm picking US East 2 as the disaster recovery region or the replica region. Now Temporal is going to add that replica to my namespace. So I've got my replica in US East 2. You can see my primary region is still AWS US East 1, and that's still where all the processing is going to be happening during the steady state while things are healthy. And you can see that on the latency graph. You see latency is still lowest in US East 1, and it's very stable. There's no gaps while I was adding the replica. There's no increase or impact because it's asynchronous. So let's cause an outage. I'm going to crash my worker or all my resources in US East 1, just a hard stop, no graceful shutdowns here. I can't bring down the whole US East 1 region, but the closest I can do is at least bring down everything I control. You can see my app is already having some issues. It can't load the workflow data. Workflows that aren't running because I don't have any resources there. They probably crash in messy ways. You can see I'm already getting some errors just 40 seconds in saying, hey, I can't, query the workflow. So let's fail over. Let's clear these errors. Let's keep things running. So the first thing is I need to go to Temporal and trigger a failover. I'm doing this in the browser from US East 1 to my DR region, US East 2. So I'm going to kick off that failover on the namespace. That's the part Temporal Cloud controls. I also need to start my resources, so my worker in the region. So I'm going to start this US East 2 worker. This is a cold start. I've never run this worker before. So I'm starting it up for the first time. I'm going to connect to it and start my TypeScript worker here. And once that is running, there we go. Once that's running, my app should be able to recover. So now I'm just going to go back to my app, which is connecting to Temporal and loading the workflow state, and just wait while it tries to recover, and Temporal fixes anything that sort of crashed mid-state and keeps my workflows running in a new region. And there you have it. I'm already back up and running. You can see it's checking things again in real time just seconds ago. I still have that state of like 2 days ago, even though this replica didn't exist 2 days ago. This worker had never been run before, but now I've got that full history and it's processing new workflow executions too. If I go down and look at the latency graph, some fun things here that you can notice. You can see this gap. There's a 3-minute gap. That was the outage, when things were down. You also see that the latencies flipped. So US East 1 got slower and US East 2 got faster, which makes sense because my processing shifted to US East 2. So that latency is going to go up because everything's running on that worker in US East 2 now, not in US East 1. So this is sort of evidence that, things have things have flipped. I told you it would be fun to look at the latency. Now you can see in the UI, I've got a history here of the failover, and I can go back and inspect these temporal workflows. It's got the full history here, just like before. Great. All right, so hope you enjoyed that, getting to see, how simple it is to have your temporal applications, workflows running, and then fail over and recover, with as few steps as you can imagine. So, what's next? We're nearing the end of the webinar. You might be wondering, where do I go from here? So if you're ready to start, you want to try it out, you can just go try it out for yourself at temporal.io. So all namespaces are eligible. You don't have to opt in to a special plan or an expensive, type of namespace. You can use whatever tool you're most familiar with, our web UI, our CLI, REST API, or Terraform. And if you're a new user, you get a $1,000 credit to use over 90 days, which is more than enough. Now, if you want to learn more, you've got more questions, want to dig deeper, I highly recommend this white paper that we've put together. Short link is right there, t.mp, that stands for temporal /HA white paper. So this is going to take you from zero to hero. It includes everything from the basics like YDR, but business case you can show to it's someone an executive. Tells you what's possible, and then it'll go through everything we covered today and a lot more, like private networking, rehearsing failovers, detecting an outage, and even an advanced pattern where you minimize your RTO by running workers in both regions. So great resource for you. It's not on the slide, but you can email ha@temporal.io. Email that, it'll go right to our team with any feedback or follow-ups related to high availability. I'll drop that in the chat. Great. So that's the end of our scheduled content. Now for what I think is the most fun part, Q&A. So Jimmy, do you want to lead us through Q&A?
Yeah, it looks like we have a few questions in here. Let's go ahead and get started with the first one. So can you discuss the pros and cons using temporal and multi-region versus multi-cloud?
For sure. So I think there's two aspects. There's the temporal cloud side, and then there's your infrastructure side. So for temporal cloud, there's really no pros and cons that come to mind of multi-region versus multi-cloud. It works the same way. It costs the same on your temporal bill. The same features are available. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And sometimes we see people even change. Sometimes they start multi-region and then they switch and they move their replica to another cloud. The one corner case is if your replica has to be on the same continent as your active. So sometimes a continent might only have one replica in GCP or like one region for GCP. So you might sort of be forced to go multi-cloud in that case if you want to do HA, since there's just not another region to go multi-region. So on the temporal cloud side, there's not really any pros or cons that come to mind. It's really all on your side, and this is your business decision of multi-region. A pro there is that you can keep all the same architecture. If you're using EC2, that works the same in every region. If you go multi-cloud, you're going to have to sort of change the tools that you're using. And then networking is another reason. If you're using public networking, just over the internet, there's no problem at all. Very easy. If you're using private networking, with multi-cloud, things start to get tricky if you're going to try to create a private connection, cross-cloud. So those are the main pros and cons. There's one final one, and this is rare, but it has happened that an entire cloud provider has had an outage or instability in all of their regions at the same time. And so for that reason, multi-cloud technically has a bit higher availability than multi-region. Because if you were multi-region, the whole cloud provider goes down. It doesn't matter if you fail over to another region, it affects the whole cloud. Those are extremely rare, but I can think of 2 instances where they've happened. So in summary, temporal cloud side, not really a difference, multi-region, multi-cloud. But for your business, you might want to think of using different tools, the networking, and do you want to protect against the whole cloud having an issue?
Great, thanks, Luke. The next question is, so say that there's a partial region outage and it impacts a service a temporal end user is not using, but maybe temporal cloud is using it. Is it possible to fail over the namespace, but keep the workers running in the problematic region if we aren't seeing other impacts on that particular workflow?
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me write this on the screen just to be very clear. So this is your steady state, and I'm going to select the pen here. And so say, region A is having some instability, and this is affecting your namespace. And so then it fails over here. And maybe that's automatic, maybe that's manual. So this is active now. So absolutely, you can leave your workers over here. Your workers can reach. So Temporal Cloud updates that endpoint to your namespace, the namespace endpoint, to point to this region now. So your workers will pick that up with DNS. And if you're using public internet, that's all there is to it. They'll just connect cross region. If you're using something advanced like private connectivity, or you're using our regional endpoints, which cut out DNS, also an advanced feature. If you're using either of those, there may be more work on your side. It just depends on how you've set it up, but it's still 100% possible. So absolutely, you can fail over the namespace and your workers stay in this region. We actually do this sometimes if we detect that, hey, a vendor subcomponent is having an outage. Even if the whole region is not down, we'll automatically fail over your namespace. And one cool thing is, even if your workers are still, connecting to this namespace because of those advanced settings or maybe DNS, like we forward requests and responses between these. So the workflows still can sort of traverse this path. So this actually does happen, has happened with some of the logos you saw on that logo slide. So I hope that clears it up. In summary, absolutely, you can leave your workers in a different region from where your namespace is active. Only thing to think about is networking. That's the only thing where if you're using advanced networking, then there may be more involved.
Great. Next question is there a way to trigger a manual failover from the CLI? And more importantly, I know in a previous cloud outage, I wasn't able to reach the temporal web UI.
Yeah. So yes, absolutely. You can fail over from the CLI. You can fail over from the REST API. Not only can you, but that is what we recommend for exactly the reason you mentioned. The web UI has more dependencies. We don't host it ourselves. We have vendors that host it. So there's more things that can fail. Your REST API, your CLI, those are going to cut out the dependencies, go as direct as possible. So that's what we recommend. And absolutely, you can do this during steady state or during an outage.
Great. And it looks like this is the last question for now. Is there a cost difference between adding a same region replica versus multi-region replica in Temporal Cloud for one namespace?
Yeah, so we didn't talk about pricing and cost on the call, um, but it's pretty simple. When you add a replica, multi-region or multi-cloud, it's 2x your actions because now all those actions are happening in two regions instead of one. So you can estimate the cost as just, what happens if I double my actions. Some people, they've already pre-purchased more actions than they need, so there's actually not an impact to their bill. So now the question asked about same region replica, which is not something we talked about in the call. It's a preview feature that a few users have tried out. And there's not a cost difference right now, but I absolutely hear you that it makes sense why you'd think that there should be a cost difference. It's something we're looking into, but right now the cost is still 2x actions for the same region replica preview feature. But if you want to avoid, if you want to do disaster recovery, protect against a cloud region outage, highly, highly recommend going multi-region or multi-cloud. It's going to protect you against all the same things that same region replica does in preview, and a lot more because now you're protected against a cloud outage. So you're not just protected against, temporal vendor failure, cell failure, but you're protected against, US East 1 goes down or something. So, hope that wraps it up. Really enjoyed the questions and the time with you all today. So thank you so much. Great. And I think we have one closing slide, which is, we have this conference coming up, San Francisco, Moscone Center, May 5th, 6th, and 7th. I'll be there. A lot of energy. A lot of speakers from AI companies will be there. Also, a lot of non-AI stuff if you're tired of hearing of it. Join us, get a huge discount, code webinar75. If you want an even bigger discount, reach out to me, ha at temporal.io. Would love to see you there and would love to take, questions in person or just chat about, your thoughts on DR and cloud infra. So that wraps it up. Thank you so much for coming today. You'll get a recording of this webinar in your inbox that will be sent to all registrants. Feel free to share it around if you know someone who'd like to learn from this content. And check out that white paper too.